is 12:59 on this. Well, it's actually kind of cool out right now for some reason on this cool Tuesday, the 21st of August. Gosh, 21st of August, that's crazy. Just looking real quick here on this first chart, looking at the dollar index and looking at that thing continue to face a lot of weakness. Those of us who have Forex customers here, we've been talking about this fall happening for a few weeks now. Finally seeing that play out. We'll see if there's going to be some short-term support around here. Could see a bit of a bid caught back up to at least a conversion of the base, but otherwise, dollar weakness. We'd like to see a scenario eventually where we see dollar weakness translate into crypto strength, but that doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. Okay. Bitcoin. So, yesterday, if anybody was trading after, I would say after hours, but after the normal trade day, if we look over here, we had a monstrously large hourly candlestick. This was at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, where we dropped from 64.15 all the way down to 62.65. There was some really interesting price action going on here because I got kind of the stink eye from my wife for not coming to supper. We alternate who cooks, and it was her turn to cook, and I was not there for the meal right away because I was watching this price action happen on both Coinbase, Kraken, and Bitfinex's charts, and there was a clear divergence in where the support levels were at, but for whatever reason, 6,310 caught a ton of volume. In fact, I bet if we were to zoom in here and look at this zone, this is Bitfinex. These are the high volume nodes in here. If you look at these, so we see there's a high volume node at 63.18, a high volume node at 63.45, and another at 63.92, and we currently have the largest one at 6,400 essentially. So there's quite a bit of action around these zones where there's volume being picked up and bought, and we can see that most of the volume here is buying volume. All right, so that's just an interesting thing to keep an eye on. We did discuss this triangle pennant formation that we had coming off of here, and that traded down, but then really this fall happened right at the close of this hourly. Then there was a little slight continuation lower, but otherwise we've had nothing but bullish buying sentiment ever since 7 o'clock Central Time yesterday evening. And even though we've broken below this structure and we've traded up, I thought we were going to trade up to test it and then get rejected lower, but no, we've actually went back into the triangle, and we're just hovering, outside that zone right now. And could we move lower? Yes. I mean, this is ultimately, I have these highlighted zones here where I'm looking for longs and shorts, and I'm looking to go long once we get back up to 65.88. And I'm looking for short below 63.25. So that's where I'm, really looking for a trade setup here in Bitcoin. Fast forwarding into some other cryptos, looking at Litecoin, it's still maintaining its value zone, still trading around that $56 value area. Ethereum, same thing. It's still trading around this 275 zone, not moving higher. And then Ethereum Classic, not doing much of anything either. So really not a lot to write home about. We've had like Walton Chain or Walton Coin has caught a little bit of a bid. It's come back. It's trying to get back up into its triangle here after breaking down yesterday as well. Nano caught a nice bid, and it's back into the structure. If we didn't draw the triangle, you can certainly see it there. And this major harmonic level is a good zone for it to sit at and hold. Nano, like I've been saying for the last few weeks, this has been my favorite. This has been one of my favorite charts to look at and buy because it's just been so beaten down. Um, it's the most beaten down chart, and I can't figure out why because it's actually a very, very cool project. I really like it. It's an instant transaction coin. I mean, as a transaction crypto, this is the best one I've ever seen. Best one I've ever tried. It's fast. It's stupid fast, and I believe it's free. I mean, it's crazy. So Nano sitting in a beautiful spot because this blue horizontal line represents the 0/8 harmonic. It is the ultimate low. Rarely do things cross below this line and remain below it. They usually generally return, and that's what we're seeing play out here. Basic attention token, one of the Coinbase 5. Again, the Coinbase 5, if you ever hear me reference them, Coinbase 5, those are referencing the 5 other cryptos that Coinbase has announced that they are looking at maybe adding to their Coinbase platform and onto the Coinbase Pro platform. So that is Cardano, Basic Attention Token, OX, Zcash, and XLM, Stellar Lumens. So Basic Attention Token, Stellar Lumens, OX, Zcash, and Cardano. And XLM holding pretty steady here as well. You know, just not a lot of movement, lots of tightening and consolidation. We could be in a pretty bearish setup on some of these guys, though. We're looking like we're just coming off of a forming a bear flag lower, but you know, of course, to break this structure higher, we need to trade up quite a ways. There's this really ugly pattern we're seeing if we want to be bullish, forming on almost every single dollar pair. Bitcoin has it too. And it's not, I mean, it's just one of those big red truck obvious formations here where we see this head and shoulders pattern. And so to nullify the formation of and completion of a head and shoulders, we need to actually begin to trade much higher here. But unless we were to break the 8,500 value area, where we still would see a lower move happen. So people who are trying to force the head and shoulders pattern, I think, can get burned. I'm going to repeat this every damn day we are together. Head and shoulders patterns are very common. They're very frequent, and they are one of the more probable. Or they're one of the more profit. They're the most. Oh gosh, I'm going to say it wrong all the time. They have the highest positive expectancy for a profitable trade. Any head and shoulders pattern, the inverse or the regular. But the problem is that they are also the most rejected patterns. So you have to wait until the neckline has been broken. I think on short time frames, for me, anything less than a daily chart, I'm comfortable taking the initial breakout. If it was something on a weekly or a daily, I would not take the initial breakout. I like to wait for it to break out and then come back to test that neckline and see if it'll hold as that support or resistance before getting into it. So that's what I like to do. All right, let's zip on over to our other chart. Let's look at the. Actually, I wanted to look at the chart here. This is the Optima software. Optima by Market Analyst. We have this bullish divergence that was happening on the daily that is still continuing to form. The close of yesterday brought us down to about the 50% level between these two swings. If we don't really even need to draw a Fibonacci on here, but it got rejected at the 45 degree square of 9 angle. And that is a pretty important thing to notice. So if we do get rejected from that, we more than likely travel at least half of the distance between between this angle and this one. So we're looking at testing the 6,000 flat area. You know, the other major support that we see is the this wavy line here. This is a harmonic or a division of the longitudinal position of Saturn. That's what this line is, and if we zoom out all the way, we can see that for whatever reason, Saturn plays an important role in determining these swings in Bitcoin's market. I don't know why that is, but it's best not to try and figure out why. It just does it. So, looking at that, strong support zone below us here around that level. I also, well, if we have time, we'll go over the square of 9. If any of you are familiar with, I should go to default. There we go. This is Gann's square of 9 right here. This is a forecasting tool, and the angles of price that show up on my charts here in Optima, like these angles here, like the 270, 225, 180, 135, 90, those are derived from the square of 9. And the square of 9 doesn't just identify prices, it identifies dates according to certain angles. And so when you get price, if price is ever trading, so if the live price action is trading near a date and a price level where they share the same angle, then that is a big deal. So for instance, we could use Ethereum maybe. This isn't the correct way to do this, but what was this? This was in January 13th, 2018. January 8th. And why not? We were trading in the 1300 value zone, is that right? What was that high in Ethereum? Give me a minute. Right here, high was 1422. So we really did not have a squared price range. If we were going to see that 1422, that would have been back here. Right around here. All right. Okay, so not a good example because I couldn't get it squared. I have to find an actual example. So, looking at it from the Ichimoku perspective, if we look at it on the 4-hour, what is nice to see on the 4-hour is that we've kind of drifted over here to just really park above this 4-hour cloud. Now, if we look and we observe price trading down, if we look at the price action here of what happened yesterday, we're kind of near the top of the cloud here on the 4-hour, but the lagging span when that happened was testing the bottom of this cloud, and so the drive down lower was accelerated with the lagging span failing to hold support. This is going to sound a little weird. I know I bring this up, but just in case some people are unaware, the lagging span is like the hidden gem of why the Ichimoku system is so effective. So if I hit the play button, it says market replay. Notice the lagging span, the black line back here, it's always 26 periods back. It follows the exact same price level, but it's just moved back. And it will respond to the baseline and conversion line in the cloud as areas of support and resistance, just like price will. So, there's a shared, if we pause it for a second, if we see it's price got up to the cloud here, it sold. We were near the top of the cloud here. So that's kind of a shared resistance zone. And then we're trading. Lagging span is still above price. That's good. Then we get inside price. That's a sign of consolidation. Also, consolidation gets tighter because we are inside the cloud on the 4-hour. All right. And look what happened when we finally saw the lagging span fail to hold the cloud. It traded down. All right. So that's a pretty normal thing to see and observe. And realistically, just looking to the side here, we're still within this value area. You know, if the lagging span, if we see the lagging span trade below the baseline and price gets below the baseline here, then we're gonna have a pretty bearish outlook. Then that's gonna be a pretty nice short signal moving forward. Not gonna be looking at a long trade. But we're also not very far from getting a long signal because price just needs to get beyond. Let me get rid of these arrows that I drew there last week. I think I drew those. Don't need the rectangles. All right, so lagging span is right here. This is kind of an interesting thing to look at too. So you see the lagging span. Where did it bounce off of? It bounced off of the baseline, and it's remained above the baseline, and now we're at the current price activity. The lagging span crossed above the conversion line, so it's above that, but it's still below price. So once we see the lagging span from the current area on the 4-hour chart, it needs to break out above here for us to have a valid signal. So we'd have to wait till 6,800, or we have to wait for it to move over to here, which is the 17th of August. Sorry, that's not the 17th of August. This is the... I got to get the right measurement. So for it to just kind of break out in time, where's the lowest area? Right here. So that would have to be, price would be trading at the 22nd. So tomorrow at 7 in the morning is where we would see the lagging span have to move above this cloud, because otherwise there's quite a bit of price for it to trade through and quite a bit of the cloud to get through. But that could happen. I mean, we're above the cloud right now on the daily, or on the 4-hour, which is nice. That hasn't happened, and it doesn't happen that much on the on Bitcoin over this entire year. That's not a very frequent occurrence. So we should be looking at a good opportunity for a long to happen, but otherwise, we're going to be sitting here pretty neutral in this trend because we're just sitting inside the cloud, even though we've just drifted over. We didn't really get above the green cloud here off of the price action. I mean, we really just kind of drifted beyond it. So, here we did, but yeah, we just kind of traded within this zone. So tight trading range, not a lot to look at. If we look at Ethereum, kind of an uglier looking chart. On the 4-hour, Ethereum actually has a beautiful short signal because we have broken down below. Now, if remember, we were talking about this yesterday where we were expecting this area to hold as a support zone. That has not. We've traded below it. We've traded below this angle. If we, got the hiccups. If we close this 4-hour below this angle, we could see us move back down to the 247.42, really just the 250 zone. But otherwise, looking at this chart, the lagging span is below the cloud. It's back below price. Price is trading below the cloud. This is, there's really nothing in front of it to stop it from moving lower. This is actually looking like a pretty nice short signal on the 4-hour chart for Ethereum. Looking at Litecoin. Litecoin's got kind of a similar situation, but it's being stubborn about breaking lower. It's finding some support on the baseline on the 4-hour chart, and it's got a chart that looks pretty similar to Bitcoin. In fact, a lot of these are going to look pretty similar as we're moving on through the day. Excuse me. Let's take a peek at Cardano. Cardano's kind of got out of all the Coinbase 5, Cardano's kind of got the ugliest chart. We are sitting slightly above yearly lows on this dollar pair. But looking ahead, now the cloud, folks, when you see the cloud and it's thin, that means it's very easy to break through it. If it's thicker, it means it's very difficult. And if it's thick and you see very flat areas, you see plateaus or flat lines on the cloud, those are areas of significant support and resistance. So right here up ahead of us, there's not a lot of weakness. There's not a lot of strength to keep this price down as we move closer to this structure over here. Additionally, this trend line here has been broken, tested, found support. Looks like we're moving to test it again. And then the furthest downside I really see is that 78.46, but we could certainly trade that lower. If I look at it from this perspective, yeah, it's where are these swings from? That's odd. It's right above its major harmonic as well, the 0.8. Yeah, it's in a shared zone. There's just a wide open expanse here. So whenever I see market geometry showing a large gotta fix that. Yeah, large space in between it without a lot of angles, then we have a good chance of seeing prices rally or fall in big moves. All right. But the volume has been growing in a lot of things. In fact, if we looked at the MFI, the money flow, excuse me. If we look at the money flow, we can see that there's a clear divergence in the activity of the volume versus the price action. So we've seen the volume increase while the prices are falling. So that is a sign that this is a false move. Probably more importantly, to look at that maybe on the Bitfinex chart of Bitcoin on the daily here. Yeah, this is showing growing volume while prices are remaining pretty flat. That is a good sign. What does this look like on Coinbase's volume? Similar, probably similar around Kraken. Similar, yeah. So we're coming out of actual. There's a divergence between the money flow indicator and the price action, and we're seeing that reflected kind of today with this activity. So this head and shoulders pattern is, if it's something that's making you leery, don't let patterns dictate your plan already just because you see it. Like I was saying, that these patterns, like the head and shoulders, they are frequent, they are common, and they are also rejected. So don't be thrown off because it's there. But I want to zip on in on the hourly, and I want to look at some opportunities to get in some trades. So, like, I'm looking at Cardano right now. Actually, did pick some up last night. It was a little higher than what it is right now. I think I picked it up at 9,300 or something. So not a huge amount. But looking at this on the hourly, we have this break of the 1 hour cloud, and it's continuing to show weakness. But if we look at the recent volume bars, we see a lot of buying and a weakening in the sell pressure. So because we're below the hourly, I want to wait until I see prices trade above the 0.0993 value zone. I want to get back above the baseline in Cardano. So I want to get resting buy orders above here, because that'll eliminate a lot of the headache of trying to determine, okay, where's this at, where are we going. Prices are flattening out here a little bit. We may be getting a W bottom. Walton chain, it's actually in a great zone to be looking at a long trade for me, because we've crossed above this angle. And so once we do cross above that angle, we move to test the next one, which is right up here. So I'm just waiting for confirmation on the hourly, where the lagging span I'm waiting for it to not only cross above this angle, but I need to see it get above the high of the cloud here, and I need to see price to get above there too. So that would be a good confirmation of a long for me. So I'm looking at that 278 zone. If we get up there, Nano, I really would like a deeper pullback to get in on here, but looking at its market geometry, we are moving to test this zone. As we get closer, the price action is going to get tighter, and then this trading range in here in this triangle at the present area, we're gonna excuse me, might have a little bit of a whipsaw activity here. This won't be a fun trade in here, so I think I might avoid it for now. Basic attention token, we've got it's sitting below its hourly cloud. It already hit the condition I would have wanted it to hit, but really I'm waiting for it to get a little higher here. Look at the sell bar on this, and then look at the current volume pushing current volume compared to this volume bar here, and now we are still pushing higher. So whether these were that's a doji right there, if you've ever seen one. Stellar Lumens, XLM, very similar to Cardano's chart. On this one, I'm really waiting for a cross above in the lagging span and price. So ultimately looking at that 22.35. Wait, is that 23.25 rather? 23.25 is where I'm looking at the opportunity to go in there. So looking at some others, if we look at Ripple's got a pretty standard bull flag happening right here. The trend. Again, I was talking about this yesterday. Flags and pennants are kind of the bread and butter of trading. And so we might even call this a descending triangle. But we get kind of a double confirmation on where I want to take a long trade, which is a break of this angle, which also brings the lagging span above the cloud and price above the cloud. But also I would like it to break this high and this high. So really looking at the 34.74. Oops. Monero, let's see. EOS is beaten down. It's ugly looking. We have that one. Zcash. This is a hard one. Nope, not going to touch it. ETC per new. What I'm really looking for is I would love to see Bitcoin break above this zone here. Now we are getting into the later part of the afternoon. All right. And we've all seen these BART moves near the end of the trading day, or shortly before the end of the trade day, or right after the end of the trade day. We see a lot of these moves happen. So could we be in a trap? Oh yeah. But like, I'm not reading a whole lot of stuff on any time frames which are telling me that we reach some brand new yearly lows today. Uh, the fact that we've returned back up into this trading range where we're still above the 6300 zone. We've had some pretty, I mean, the look at the volume here has been rising on the hourly pretty nicely compared to the 4 hour. The 4 hour is actually dropping. Well, that's never fun. But again, like the long trade here is above this entire zone. And ultimately, we are creating higher lows and lower highs, but the distance between each lower high is not much, where we're getting larger gaps in these higher lows. So that's something to take notice of. There is even an argument for an inverse head and shoulders in this zone. I mean, that's being a little generous, but look at the selling on this candlestick from yesterday evening and notice where price action is right now. If there's a lot of shorts, because there was short volume is pretty huge, and I don't have it up here for some reason. I know I have it on my laptop, but I would encourage everybody to have on their charts the Bitcoin shorts and Bitcoin longs feed from Bitfinex, because the shorts right now the shorts are near the all-time high. All right, the short volume is near the all-time high in Bitcoin. Okay, so if we look at the daily, look how much short volume there is in Bitcoin. Okay, couple ways you can read this. All right, there's a couple ways you can, and really we're looking at essentially the inverse chart of the one we have. If we do a side by side here, and then we on the bottom chart we'll put up Bitcoin. Let me clear all these drawings. So if we're looking at this activity here, and then you could almost think of I actually do have an indicator. You can, well, actually you don't even need an indicator. You can put the moving average, or you can plot a line graph of this price action, but there is a divergence going on here, because look at, I want to see where this swing low is. This is the daily. This was on August, 3rd of August, 2018. Let's get that. 3rd of August, 2018. I think the contractors are here. 3rd of August, 2018. Boom. Okay, so looking at both of those dates, they're lined up. And look at what's going on here. So we see short volume going up, coincides with prices traveling down. But then we see this. Prices are flattening out here and finding support at a price range and at this 4/8 inner harmonic of 6,300. But then we see the short volume continuing to rise. And let's take a look at the 4-hour volume on both of these charts now. Let's compare the current activity. Okay, so short volume continuing to increase, but we're getting pretty Harami-ish and Doji-ish looking candlesticks on Bitcoin. All right, this could be a really good sign for a bullish bias, because this is what you call a short squeeze. This happens in equities or in futures quite a bit. So, if you've ever tried trading stocks before, you'll realize very quickly that trading stocks is a fool's errand. It's a fool's game, and trading in general is kind of an idiot's game. I mean, I regularly, if anybody gets a hold of me like on Upwork or freelance.com about wanting to trade, I do my best to discourage them, and I've done very well at that. I've had private students in the past, have some right now, but uh, trading is. I know I've said it before, but there's Robert Prechter said that there's basically two kind of people in a market. There's the analyst and the trader. The analyst is a master of observation. The trader is a master of self. So that I do believe that is true, and I think a lot of people could become very good analysts, but not a lot of people are able to turn that into trading. So it's amazing how well you can logically find a high probability trade, but then your own emotions destroy your trade. It's a very common thing. Anyways, so what we're looking at here is this is the short interest volume of Bitfinex. So they're telling us how much activity is short on this trade currently. And we have quite a bit of rising short volume. In fact, we're approaching that all-time high in the short volume. But we're not seeing that reflected in the price action in Bitcoin. So what does that mean? Well, if you're short something, and if you're short in any crypto on any exchange, you're doing it on margin. Okay, it's not like Forex or futures where it's as easy to go long as it is to go short. Well, it is easy. I mean, it's still margin, but whatever. Now I'm just going to be word babbling and trying to correct myself. But a short squeeze happens when a whole bunch of people who are short have to cover. So it's really the opposite of you went long in Bitcoin at 14,000 and now you want to sell because it's too painful. The prices, if they rise here, if we move above this angle, all right, if we move above this triangle, we get up to that 6,500, 6,600 zone. This chart tomorrow should be bloody as hell. I mean, we should see a very red short chart because the shorts, this is kind of a weird way to look at this, but this is telling us a whole lot of people are shorting Bitcoin. And when we see the short chart turn bearish, that means that they are covering. That means they've turned into buyers. They're covering their positions, which increases the buying of, is reflected in higher prices in Bitcoin. We may very well see that play out here. Yesterday's activity over the evening may have just been one big bear trap, because I have a hard time believing that this kind of price action is done by professional traders, because it's just so blatantly obvious and it's parabolic. That's the other thing. It's straight up parabolic right now, this move. So this is, I mean, if it's not indicative of a trap, then that means that there is a ginormous amount of people who want to short at these levels, and it may be of such an amount that longs will not be able to compete with it, where they'll just be turning into sellers too, so we get a waterfall event in price action. But again, looking below here, this is Bitcoin's chart. It's a very interesting 4-hour candlestick that we have, that we close in the next hour and a half. And I'm really looking to see what happens if we do trade higher. This is looking to be a pretty nice jump if we do. I like to do the day counts as well. You know, we haven't talked a lot about, didn't do it a lot last week or this week, about using those Gann day counts. So I want to measure the number of days that we've traded from a recent swing high. And that kind of gives us an idea of what could be coming up. So on a date range from there. All right, so we're getting in a 30-day area. It's a pretty normal reversal zone. In fact, I bet if we were to check this out from swing to swing, we would see around the 30-day zones are pretty common for What's going on here? Oops. There was a swing here. Yeah. Also, a 30-day cycle is a normal one in Gann's cycles, 30-day cycle. This is a pretty nice candlestick. This is an inside bar on the daily, by the way. These are the kind of candlesticks we like to see on dailies. Inside bars. And trading an inside bar is pretty simple, folks. There's a lot of strategies out there where people... And there's a lot of experienced traders out there where they only trade inside bar setups. You know, they're price action traders and they only use inside bars. Inside bars are telling you a story. Inside bars are talking. They're telling you that there's indecision or there's Charlie Haddad. How are you? So in the inside bars, I mean, the long is not really far off from where I originally had that. It's at that, you know, probably 6,500. And then the short zone is down below at the 6,200 zone. Wondering why in the world it seems to be a lot of memory drain here. Probably because I'm streaming. All right. And there we go. Okay. It's a pretty bullish daily we got there. Let's zip on into the hourly one more time. Yeah, I've actually got an inside bar on the hourly here as well. 2 inside bars on the hourly. All right, so we're in a pretty deep congestion area. We keep you know, on the daily here, we're actually forming another triangle on this price action, a short-term triangle. Got to be careful of this entire zone. This will be, I think today, I said today. Yesterday I was talking about today. This could be a day where we see a move in another direction, another drive higher. Probably not one lower, but definitely wait to look and pay attention to a return to the 6,500 value area. When we're looking at that short chart, guys, I mean, this chart, excuse me, this is a pretty interesting short chart. There is a lot of volume participation in this short. It's pretty wild how heavy these shorts are. And it's pretty parabolic. What happened to Bitcoin on the 12th of April? Because the shorts capitulated heavily here on the 12th of April. Oh, we know what happened. On the 12th of April, actually, and even before that, we saw Bitcoin go from 6,500 all the way up to near the 10,000 value area. All right. So we had a pretty big drive higher when the shorts were previously at that level, and they are back at that level again. This is a pretty ridiculous. A parabolic move is defined by an ever-increasing trend line. So, I mean, here we have a trend line, and then this is a trend line now too, okay? This has just gone straight nuts. It actually rejected a head and shoulders here, okay? You want a good example of a head and shoulders pattern being rejected? We are looking at it right there. We have a head and shoulders set up. Did not happen. If you tried to do your short activity here, if we're looking at a different chart other than one that's just telling us the short interest here, then we'd be looking at a different story. But yeah, definitely all-time highs on the on these short volume. This is looking pretty dangerous for the short crowd. And the slope on here is just, or the pitch here is just ridiculous. So any move down in this candlestick is gonna cause a pretty big waterfall event. I'm actually I would like to see that play out and record it, because that'd be kind of fun. So, you know, the higher Bitcoin moves today, this afternoon and this evening and tonight, you know, the more the more we're definitely going to see a real capitulation in those short positions. That's gonna be kind of fun to watch. Real quick, any questions? Please feel free to ask questions, by the way, about anything really. Again, on the if you have questions about the Ichimoku, you know, please ask. What am I doing? What in the world? There we go. Yeah, 64.29, man. I'm kind of sorry if I'm kind of spacing out here, because can you show us how to set up a Gann chart? Absolutely. Good question. All right, so there are a number of ways to create a Gann chart. Probably the easiest, and the one that you should learn first, is how to square a range. So I need a brand. We'll use Bitcoin for. No, you know what? Not Bitcoin's kind of hard to do this on, because it's so new. So it's hard to. Well, no, we could use Bitcoin. That's fine. Yeah, we can use Bitcoin. So we use Bitcoin's chart. We need a brand new chart though. And this is being recorded, so if you get lost, or if you want to reference it later, you can watch this recording. And here's what we want to do. We want to go to a daily chart. All right? Very important that we go to a daily chart. And I'm using Coinbase for this. I'm using the Bitcoin dollar Coinbase pair. Okay? First thing you want to do, and this doesn't matter what kind of, doesn't matter if this is Bitcoin or whatever. You want to identify the first two things. You want to identify where the all-time low is and the all-time high. So for Bitcoin, the all-time high is over here. It's to the right of the all-time low. So the all-time low on Coinbase is sitting down here, where the all-time high is over here. If we were looking at something like the dollar yen, where we would see the all-time high is in the past and the all-time low is down here, that'd be a different chart. We'd be squaring the range of a high to a low instead of a low to a high. So in Bitcoin, that's what we're gonna be squaring, we're squaring the range of a low from a low to a high. Why is this so slow and choppy? This is just weird. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to get the horizontal line. Doesn't matter what color it is, and we want to put it right on the all-time high. I'm going to make it thinner because it's more accurate. Now, if you're wondering how do you get it to kind of stick on there, if you use the magnet mode, this icon here on the left of my screen, or I've got my cursor on it, magnet mode will put it near the high or the low. So here it'll kind of automatically throw it onto the high. It's a very nice little trick. Now I've got that done. Now, this is a very important part. This is the part you do not want to F up, or you will ruin everything. You're going to right click on the screen and go to properties. And we need to go to scales. And we have to square the chart. Squaring the chart, it doesn't matter actually what the ratio is when you square it, as long as when you're applying the square, you keep it that way until you're done putting the square on there. So, you know, in some instruments, you know, you can go one, you can use one where you go 1 unit of price equals 1 unit of time. Sometimes you have to do 20 units of time for 20 units of price, or 1 unit of price. We want to get it to where, you know, depending on your screen, you know, you want to get it to where it's going to be as square as possible. So, because if we do it with a 1, this is just not going to work out at all. It's way too congested. We could do it at 10 maybe. Still a little too tight, but probably 100 is, oh, that's way too much too. Yeah, we don't want 100. 50. 50 is probably okay. Yeah, we could do 50. I forgot what I did with the one on my Bitcoin. So now this is going to, gosh, this is actually, well, we can do it. So if you see the all-time low over here, it's on the very bottom. There's kind of this little nipple hanging out here, for lack of a better description. That's the lowest low that we have on this chart. And what I'm going to want to do is get the Gann square fixed. All right, the Gann square fixed. Very important to get the Gann square fixed. And I'm going to put it on the low there. And, you know, depending on how good or bad your eyes are, you can see that, you know, you don't have to put it right on there with the cursor. It'll just the magnet will just kind of drag it to it. Now I'm on the low. I'm going to click once. I'm going to move my mouse until this green middle line here, this diagonal line, that's the 45-degree angle, until that intersects with the horizontal line. Now, while you're doing all this, do not scroll. You will screw up the square. Okay? Don't scroll at all. Don't scroll in or out. You have to maintain this until we get the actual square down, okay? So I've got that square on there. The next thing I need to do is I need to go back up to that same toolbar where I got the Gann square fixed. And now I want to go to the Gann box. Now the Gann box is just a name. It's not, Gann box is just kind of a name for any square that Gann used. So Gann box, I'm going to put it at the same place I started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this so that it follows the 45-degree angle until we intersect with that horizontal line, okay? And then once I have that done, I just click and I have the square there, all right? Then I can delete the bigger square there. I don't need that anymore. Okay? Now all I have to do, and now this is where you can, if you want to right click on your screen and go to price scale, you can go back to auto scale. That's fine. Now all I need to do is I need to clone or copy this, and I'm just going to slide them so that they are on top of one another. All right. So I'm going to keep doing that. Clone. All right, and I'm going to clone it again. And there's the square on the chart. Okay? Now your square, this is the fascinating thing about Gann squares, is that they're just fractals. All right? Like, they're fractals. You can actually, I mean, if you wanted to, you could take the, you could double the size of the squares if you wanted to. I mean, you would have to put a square above, diagonal and to the right of it. You could create a large square like that if you wanted. And in some instruments, you have to do that because you just won't be able to trade on them. So anyways, I've got this on the daily. Sometimes the daily is not a very good chart to look at because the candlesticks, they they float inside and out the angles quite a bit. Sometimes you got to bring it down to the 4 hour, the hourly. But, depending on how your square is set, you can see that prices like to follow angles. Prices like to trade in the angles. They like to trade in the various geometric shapes that form around these angles. You can tell that it kind of gives you an idea of a trading range around them. Like we have this head and shoulders pattern here, but we also know that there was a break of that before the neckline was broken because of this angle here. So, this is just an example of how to create that kind of a square. Now, the other part of also I'm gonna mention this because your Gann box probably doesn't look like this, because by default it looks like this. So to fix this is very easy. You double click on it or you right click on it, and we see all this stuff in here. These two shaded lines where you can adjust the opacity of that. Just turn those all the way over to the right and select angles. And then there's all the angles. Now, the issue with TradingView's Gann box is that it uses only Fibonacci ratios of time and price, where Gann used Gann had different. I mean, the angular nature is shared very much with the Fibonacci levels. Gann's angles that he used are very much. I mean, they might as well be. They're in the same realm as naturally occurring Fibonacci sequences. So that's what we see here. But the time cycles, I would get rid of them except for the 50% one, because you're not going to need those. And one other thing, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in Forex Lens, and I don't think I've ever mentioned it in, well, no, I have in our Forex Lens group. I know I've never mentioned this in our crypto room, is the time cycles. And I'm going to give you one right now. This is called the law of vibration. This is something that Gann he wrote about this, and he didn't really, he purposely kind of made it difficult to get. But there's a guy named Tony Plummer who wrote a book called The Law of Vibration, and it is a mind bender, man. I tell you what, it is out there. But he talks about the law of vibration and really talking about a pattern that is constant and consistent in everything. But what I'm referencing is the time cycle. So how you apply the law of vibration is you identify a major swing high or swing low. So, for instance, the all-time high right here is at 19,800 and whatever it is. We start the day after that. Okay, so the next day I put a horizontal line there. I like to color that blue. I'll make it thicker so you can see it. All right. Now we want to measure out a period of days. The law of vibration is a 192-day cycle. All right? The law of vibration goes for 192 days. All right? Now, is it a coincidence that there was a major swing low found at the beginning and the end of a new time cycle in the 192-day law of vibration? No, that's not a coincidence. Further, we will divide this by every 24 days. So halfway in between 192 is 96. And then I color these lines. The middle line light blue, and I don't make them as thick. That's just, you can do whatever you want to do, but that's what I do. And then, I actually just, a lot of times now, I just put in the red vertical, the 48-day rotations. 48 days. This is red. So every 24 days there's a behavior given to those days, right? So where you see the exact middle of that time cycle is where you have this acts as a resistance in time to the trend in force. All right, and then the red areas are also their pivots in time. So these areas themselves, any red horizontal or red vertical levels, indicate a source of resistance to the trend in force. So, when you know you've got a pivot coming in, a vertical pivot like this, 48 days after the beginning of the 192-day cycle, and then 48 days before the end of that cycle, the beginning of a new one. Whenever you see this horizontal bar and the market is trending up to it, sometime before or after, you have an extremely high probability of price falling or rising just in the counter of that move. Okay? This doesn't mean you're always going to see long-term trend changes, but it does mean that you have a very high probability of price moving in the opposite direction, especially if volume is approaching that zone. And so I think for a lot of people, when they've tried trading and they're trading only price, you're only getting half of the market when you do that. Market geometry, these lines, these angles, this is going to seem weird, but and I hate to say it because I hate moving averages, but these angles are really not, they are like support and resistance in that price treats them like that, but what they really are is they're levels of momentum. That's what, in the Gann box or a Gann square, these diagonal lines represent momentum. And so when something is it is considered, price and time are considered to be an equilibrium and square when they're trading along one of the 45s. Okay, well, as long as price is trading up a 45, that means it's trading in equilibrium. When prices are trading way above the 45, that means they have a high probability of snapping back down to that 45. And when prices are trading well below that 45, they have a high probability of trading up to it. Okay? So as we're looking at this new square we drew, we can see that we are trading below this 45, and we haven't had a responsive selling. And I mean, how many days are we into this? I need to go to 48 days. Well, beam me up, Mr. Scotty. I'm going to say we reverse around here. What was the trend coming down to this red horizontal pivot in time? Down. I'm going to say we move back up. All right? That's what I'm saying. Now, depending on how you squared your chart, and depending on what the number was that you squared it, yours may not look the same. I know that mine does, like in the square of, like this is these charts. This is called a square of 144. It's a different form of a square, because some markets are more sensitive, like Bitcoin, for example, I have found is more sensitive to this kind of a square than it is to squaring a range. But squaring a range, I think I trade futures and Forex and cryptos. The square of a range is very effective in Forex, and I found it to be very effective in equity futures. But the square of 144 seems to be more accurate for Bitcoin, at least. And I was trying another square. It's a square of 52. Square 52 is another one this is the most recent one that I've worked on. And I think Bitcoin is pretty sensitive to this one as well, but not as sensitive as that 144. So yeah, Bitcoin's right up against this 45-degree angle. So yeah, any questions on this? I do want to go over all the ways to square these because this has taken me, there is no class for this, by the way, to learn how to do these. Even in the Chartered Market Technicians material, there is nothing on how to apply Gann's market geometry to your charts. There is nothing there's no class on to learn how to use the square of 9 or how to apply financial astrological phenomena onto your charts. You know, this is what I'm talking about is just things that I've learned through my years of studying Gann and applying it and trading it and testing it on my own, training it on my own. If you're a huge Gann fanatic, I'm not advertising this or anything. I'm just, and I don't get borderline wizardry. Yes, it is. When I first started, I'm going way over my time here, but when I first started squaring ranges, I remember I think I was reading Michael Jenkins's book on squaring ranges. When I first did that with the euro dollar, I was like, I got chills. I'm not kidding. I straight up nerd raged chills because I was like, this is just as fucking crazy. This can't be like this. This can't be this easy, is it? Well, holy cow, it is. I mean, if you apply some time cycles, market geometry, and then some oscillators, you find I have found a surprising amount of winning trades. The market geometry, at least the various squares that Gann would use, that was like what was missing for me. I mean, that's kind of like what put it all together. And now I can't trade without it because it's like if trading is a road trip and you have to get to a certain destination, then trading without Gann's geometry is kind of like driving blind without using Google Maps. At least with the market geometry, you get an idea of the path something may take and the range that it would be trading in, and it's not in perfect horizontal levels of support and resistance. It's not it is definitely not something that a lot of traders use, and Gann it takes years to learn, and then it takes a whole lot of balls to want to actually try and use it in your trading. But I mean, it's hard to learn because there's not a lot of stuff out there or people that use it regularly, but I do. So, and I know that I found a lot of people are very interested in it, and people that I've talked to have used it with a lot of success. And I think that, I think it's something better than moving averages and Bollinger Bands. By the way, I hate moving averages. I think they are the devil. I think that a lot of people learn moving averages and anyways, let's see, it's 2:08. Kind of got a little out there, but tomorrow, depending what the market is doing, why don't we reserve like a half of the session or use half hour or 15 minutes of the session on the Gann geometry. And so, Lewis, if you're back here tomorrow, if you have some questions about it, I would love to answer those. And some other people, if you have questions too, if you're watching the recording of this right now and you have applied this, if you have questions, come back tomorrow, ask them. And I'm going to say maybe look at a different chart to try and apply this market geometry. Okay, use it on the euro or the S&P 500 or excuse me, anything else. Bitcoin's hard to square because it's got such a funky chart. Anyways, so those of you who are Forex Lens customers watching this now or watching the recording, I will see you tomorrow morning bright and early at 7:30. And for the rest of you, I will see you here tomorrow at 1 in the afternoon. Hope you guys all have had a great trade week. Hope you had a good day yesterday. And trade well, trade smart, and don't trade overly emotional. I will talk with you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.